We're not used to being bored, we don't like being bored, and we will do just about anything to avoid being bored. And that can definitely be a problem, especially if you consider yourself creative, especially if you're interested in creating a body of work that is going to be meaningful and impactful to you and to future generations. But even if your goals aren't that lofty, training your brain to constantly crave distraction and entertainment is not a good thing. Let's talk about why. I have a confession to make. I reach for my phone at red lights. Honestly, I stop the car, my foot presses on the brake, the light is red, car comes to a complete stop, and automatically, without even thinking about it, I reach beside me, I grab my phone, and I hit the refresh on the email notification. I haven't even been asking myself why I do this. If there's nothing in my email and I still have time before that light turns green, I'll check my texts, or I'll see if there's something new in my Facebook feed. And yes, I know that this is potentially dangerous, but I don't touch my phone once I drive, so the moment that I start driving, I put the phone away, and I honestly haven't been giving this habit a second thought. It's just something that I have done for probably more than a year now. So now that I've shared this embarrassing and definitely dangerous confession, I want to ask you, how often do you reach for your phone while you're standing in the lineup to buy something, or while you're waiting for your bread to toast, or while your kid's at a soccer game, or while you're on the toilet? How many times do you reach for your phone? And why do we do this? It's not because whatever's on the phone is so important that we have to know right then and there, right? The truth is that we have managed to rewire our brains to look for that hit of entertainment. And because it's so easy to just reach into our pockets and get it, we're not giving our brains a chance to really be bored, be focused, and create. I picked up Cal Newport's deep work because I read another one of his books, and that was How to Become a Straight A Student. And it's targeted clearly at students, specifically at students at the university or college level in North America. I've heard from other people saying that it really doesn't apply to students who are not in North America. But for me, because I was going back to school after 15 years, I found it incredibly valuable, and I really liked it. Specifically, I liked his take on how to become the best in your field when you don't have a lot of time to invest in cramming or really long studying sessions. Anyway, so I thought that was a phenomenal book. And then I've been hearing really good things about this one, so I thought it would be a really good book to follow it up with. And I read this at the beginning of the year, and I thought it was a really great way to start off the year because it gave me a lot to think about. Now, a couple of caveats before we go any further. Number one, Newport is a scientist and a professor and an academic, so his language is pretty dry. But the ideas contained within are very valuable, so if you can get past that, that's great. Something else you need to keep in mind is that some of the examples that he shares don't seem very relatable. He talks a lot about computer programmers and CEOs of multi-billion-dollar companies. And if you're an artist of any kind, or if you're a stay-at-home mom, you might find it difficult to relate to some of these examples. But that shouldn't put you off from reading the book. You might just have to work a little bit harder to read between the lines and figure out how some of those things would apply to you. I'm going to put this down now because I don't want to hold it up for the whole video, but this is what it looks like. So first of all, let's talk about what deep work is. And deep work is a term that Newport has coined. Well, actually, let me just read you Newport's definition of it. Newport says that deep work is professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limits. Basically, what he's really saying is that you can't really create anything meaningful or worthwhile if you're looking at your phone every 20 seconds. Makes sense, right? Speaking of looking at your phone every 20 seconds, did you know that the average person taps, swipes, or clicks, or otherwise interacts with their phone a whopping 2,167 times a day? That is a grand total of 2.64 hours a day that the average person interacts with their phone. Honestly, how are we supposed to create anything of any real value or meaning when we're so busy looking at these guys every few seconds? The issue, of course, is not just with technology, although with many personal computers in all of our back pockets, that has become the main danger to our creative flow. However, it's just as distracting if you've got a coworker who's constantly coming in to tell you about her hot date last night, or if your boss is constantly calling you every 5 minutes to ask you a question, or if your 4-year-old, like mine, is interrupting you every 20 seconds to ask you something or to ask you to do something. And all of those are a reality for so many of us. And I'm not saying, and neither is Newport, that you need to become a monk or move to France or lock yourself away from the world to create anything of any meaning or importance. But we are saying that perhaps it's time to put down the phones. Perhaps it's time to find yourself some distraction-free, sacred time and really dedicate yourself to your work. Even if that means it's for half an hour a day, although Newport doesn't think that there's much value in that, but I do. I think there's a lot of value in 10 minutes of focused creative work a day, which is what I was doing for years while I had a newborn at home. And I think there's a lot of value in half an hour a day, 2 hours on a weekend, on a Saturday morning, if that's all you can give. Just make sure that that time is your time, that you're prioritizing it, and that you're telling everybody else that Mama's door needs to be shut and I just need to do my thing for a while. Because the main idea here is this: we can only really create meaningful work, creative work, important work to ourselves and others, but mostly to ourselves, when we commit ourselves to doing that in a distraction-free environment for as long of a period of time as we can afford to give ourselves. You'll notice I focus a lot on creativity because that's where my area of expertise and of interest lies. Newport doesn't focus on those things, but I do, so I am bringing that creative focus to this book, even though you're not actually going to find it between its pages. But however you choose to express yourself, whether that's through drawing or painting or writing or poetry or art direction or acting or hula hooping or belly dancing, whatever it is that you do, you can't really do it unless you are focused on it. You can't create in a state of distraction. Okay, so how about some concrete tips for eliminating distraction? Because I've talked a lot about why it's important to do that, but I haven't actually given you anything that you can take away from this video. And I think that's important, so here we go. In the book, Newport talks about quite a few strategies that you could implement, and some of them are more manageable than others depending on how your life is structured and depending what season of life you're in too. If you've got small kids at home, the idea of setting aside hours and hours for uninterrupted, distraction-free time is kind of a pipe dream, let's face it. But for some of us, for example, if you're retired and you've got lots of time and your kids are gone and you've paid your dues and here's your time to just focus for 8 hours a day, if that's what you want to do on your own creative work, then it's fantastic if you've got that kind of time. But even if you don't, you can still manage to, if not eliminate, then lessen the impact of those distractions on you, on your soul, on the way that you prioritize your own time. Okay, so my number one tip, and the one that I found the most valuable to me, has to do with the cell phone. And it has to do with the fact that if I click on it right here, you will see I have no notifications on this phone. And that's because I turn them off. I turn them off on purpose, and it has, this is going to sound a little bit extreme, but it feels like it's given me my life back. This thing used to ding and ping and buzz and vibrate every minute practically, because I've got Facebook and I've got Instagram and I've got emails and I've got text and I've got other apps on here. I've got fitness apps and things that are constantly pinging and dinging away from my attention. So I turned them all off, all of them. And within a couple of hours, I realized that I could breathe. I no longer had this, and I didn't even know it was there, but there was this constriction right here that felt like, oh, what am I missing out on? Oh, what is that? And it does really all come back to that fear of missing out. What am I missing out on? What's happening on social media? Is somebody talking about me? Do I really need to look at that? Did someone leave a YouTube comment? Should I reply to it immediately? The truth is, I don't need to do any of those things immediately. The emails will still be there when I choose to check them. Your lovely YouTube comments will still be there when I go to look at them. The Facebook notifications aren't going anywhere. None of it is going anywhere, but I don't need to be aware of it the moment that it happens. And so that's my number one tip, is just turn those suckers off, or at the very least, mute them. You really don't need them dinging and pinging in your world all the time. My number 2 tip for eliminating distractions is to reply to fewer emails. And this one is hard for me because I'm really big on replying to emails. I think it's so important that I interact specifically with you guys. With any of the women that choose to reach out to me, I will always answer those emails. I prioritize them. I think they're incredibly important. However, Newport does have 2 tips for replying to fewer emails and therefore saving yourself some time and some distraction. So his number 1 tip is don't reply to anything that you're not interested in. So if it's a question or a proposal or anything that doesn't interest you and it doesn't come from somebody that demands an answer like your boss or your mom, then you can safely ignore it and just delete it guilt-free. So the way this applies to me is that I get a bunch of emails throughout the week from companies that are reaching out to me wanting me to work with them for them to sponsor one of my videos. And I typically say no because the products aren't a good fit and I don't want to sponsor anything that I don't believe in. And I try to keep that stuff away from my channel as much as possible so that the things that I do bring to my channel, you guys know that I fully believe in. Anyway, just today I got one of those things and somebody wanted me to talk about their wood cutting tool. Totally not a good fit for this channel. And in the past, you know, the polite Canadian in me would take the time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, however long it took, to reply to that email, to say thanks but no thanks, to explain why that's not a good fit. Now I just delete it guilt-free. Not a good fit. If they didn't do their research to figure out that this wouldn't be a good fit for my channel, then it's not on me to educate them about that. So that's the first tip. Number 2 is don't reply to anything where nothing good and nothing bad is going to happen if you don't reply. So for example, sometimes a conversation has just run its course, right? If somebody has replied to you and said, yes, I'll meet you at 5 o'clock on Tuesday at Starbucks, you don't then need to reply back and say, great, see you there, or looking forward to it, or whatever. Even if it's just a few seconds that it would take you to reply, at that point, would anything good happen if you replied? No, it's the same thing. Would anything bad happen if you didn't reply, rather? No, really nothing would change. So evaluate those emails that you're sending and figure out whether you really need to reply to as many emails as you're replying to. I know that this really cut down on the amount of time that I was wasting in front of my computer. And my number 3 tip, and this is the most difficult one for most people, is to train your brain to do nothing. Train it to be quiet, to be still, to not reach for that hit of entertainment and dopamine and whatever else is happening in there when you check your phone. So the next time you're standing in the lineup, or you're in traffic, or your kid's playing soccer, don't touch your phone. Leave it in the car, leave it somewhere else if you think that you're going to be tempted. And then just wait and see what happens. When was the last time you sat in an airport and you didn't reach for your phone? When was the last time you just people watched, or you just sat there thinking? I think this is why so many people have trouble meditating, because their thoughts wander. They instantly wander, right? You find yourself alone for even a minute or two, and your thoughts go to all kinds of places. You're wondering what the rating on that latest movie was that came out last Friday that you don't even remember the name of, or whether Mary had her baby, and you think, gee, if I could just reach for my phone, I could find the answers to those really important questions. Or you could sit there, just you and your thoughts, and think about your creative project. Or don't think about anything at all. Both are equally valuable. And that means that the next time that you go to your desk and you go to actually sit down and work, your brain will be quiet. And it will know that this is the time to get into flow, that this is the time to focus, that this is the time to create. This is your time to create. As for me, I am not reaching for my phone at stoplights anymore, and my phone is staying in my purse and it's staying in the back seat. I do have one notification that I keep turned on, and that is a notification from my husband's phone. And only because if he's got something to tell me about my daughter, like, hey, her school called and you've got to go pick her up, then it's important that that notification gets through to me, so I will listen for that. But otherwise, everything else is turned off, everything else is quiet, and I have really been prioritizing my work for Flutter and Sprout, my videos, my content creation, and my creative work, my painting, my drawing, my journaling, all of that stuff. And now I would love to hear from you. How is your distraction level these days? Are you finding that you're creating the kind of meaningful work that your soul craves? If so, how are you doing that? And if not, why not? Let me know in the comments below. As always, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you being here. I'll see you in the next one.